How do I manage my references for a federal job application? Hello everyone, my name is Fatima Mahmood. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. This video reflects my own views and opinions, no one else's, and it's not been pre-approved or endorsed by any federal agency or other employer, academic program, or membership association. Let's discuss how I manage my relationships with my references while applying and interviewing for a new federal position. This video is primarily for candidates for federal government jobs, but others in different fields may also benefit from this content. If the federal job requires you to use the standard reference forms inside the USA job systems, then use it. Always do what the official application requires you to do. If it allows you to upload a one-page reference sheet, that's fine. You might want to do that. The final submitted candidate applications to many federal jobs are long documents, whether the agency prints them to PDF or paper. So there is less of an expectation for short length in the federal government compared to private or nonprofit sectors. If you've heard differently, then please email me at my email address presented at the end of this presentation or in the comments below. Later, I will discuss my own one-page reference sheet. Firstly, I ask my references their permission to list them in my application. I make sure they have time in their schedule to do so. Normally, I notify them by email, but if that person prefers a phone call to discuss things, then I'm willing to do that happily. In my email request, I attach the job posting or announcement I applied to, my cover letter, if I sent one in the application. Sending a draft is fine, so long as it's nearly ready and clearly marked as a draft. A copy of my resume, could be my general resume, so they have my background, or a draft tailored resume to this position. Using drafts here is fine because I want to secure their consent before I finish and submit my actual application with its finalized content. References generally should be people who know you and your work, but a copy of your resume helps remind them of the details of the majority of your experiences. All of this assumes that you're applying to a job that you can actually discuss. Not all jobs allow you to even discuss the application process with people outside the federal agency. So now I have people's consent, I applied, and I've been invited to my first round of interviews. I routinely keep my references updated on my progress. Here's the why. I had a friend who asked me to be a reference and never updated me on the whole application process. She told me the employer's name verbally, but months later I forgot about it. I randomly got a call months later from the person who interviewed her asking to speak to me. I didn't know the phone number. I didn't receive any email heads up. I took the call anyway and hesitantly answered the questions I was asked about my friend. I, of course, was suspicious about this being a scammer, but I also didn't want to negatively impact my friend. After the interviewer finished all her questions, I contacted my friend to confirm that person's valid identity. This example is one of many reasons I routinely keep my references updated on my hiring progress, regardless of the outcome. Here's how I do that. Once I have the interview date and time, I email the references those two details. Again, I remind them of the agency and department or office that will interview me. I do individual emails, not group ones. If they need me to remind them of any information, I'm happy to do so. I also email my references after the interview as soon as possible, regardless of how well or poorly I think I did. And I tell them how I felt I performed at the interview. Usually, I send thank you emails to the interviewers as soon as I can, and then I email my references. Here's what else I tell them in that email, so long as I have that information. The names of all the people who interview me, even if I only have partial names. Sometimes you are given full names in writing via business card or preliminary email or calendar invite. Sometimes the candidate is not able to slow down the process enough to get full names. If I have a clear indicator of who will actually check references, I tell them that person's name. Even if I have a guess, I will share that. I won't share other people's contact information with my references, but I will tell that reference the domain name of that agency's government email address, for example, at ftc.gov, at cfpb.gov, or at sec.gov. This helps the reference look out for specific emails and not assume a message is a mistake or spam if they're not accustomed to being contacted by people from that agency in their normal course of their government duties. If I was invited to additional rounds of interviews, I would repeat this exact same process of notification. If I received an offer, my references will be among the first group notified. Something that could happen at this stage is that they could have additional tips, information, or advice that could help me with my offer. This might happen because I kept them in the loop. If I took time and then made a decision about the offer, my references would be among the first notified regardless of the type of decision I made. Hopefully they would be happy for me. Even more, they could still have more tips, information, or advice for me now that I am joining that employer or making a different decision. So clearly, I believe in keeping my references updated. You might have a reference who just doesn't want all this information, so that's fine, and you should let them know that it's some very pleasant and beneficial side effects that occurred because of the keeping them in the loop. Some, not all of my references were called, and that's fine. As soon as my references got off the phone with my interviewers, they either called me directly or emailed me. References not only sang my praises to the interviewers, they advocated for me by asking questions on my behalf, and the interviewer gave them actual answers. When you conclude an interview as a candidate, sometimes you have a sense of how well you did. My references directly asked the interviewer, "How did Fatima do in the interview?" And then they told me the answer. A smart candidate in a government interview knows to ask, "What are the next steps?" or "Where are you in the hiring process?" which can be very lengthy. And sometimes you get a vague or general answer that you just have to accept. My references asked the same questions and got better, clear answers than I did. Then they told me. For the big finale, my references asked, "When can Fatima expect to hear from you?" And then they told me the answer. These were fantastic and useful questions. Someone else might think of even better ones. Having all of this information can make you feel positive and secure in the hiring process. I was blown away that my references did this for me, and more so that it actually worked. You may have a reference who is happy to sing your praises, but may not want to ask these questions on your behalf. Nothing wrong with that, and still having that person be a reference for you. Your reference can ask these questions very respectfully, but perhaps the interviewer won't answer them or does so very vaguely. Nothing wrong with that. At least it is being shown that in your professional life, you have clear and strong advocates. Not everyone will have the same outcomes as I did, and that's okay. These are just potential ways to maximize your references in the hiring process. Always thank your references for volunteering their precious time. Sometimes people, based on their personality, are happy to receive just a thank you from you and nothing else. They wouldn't want you to buy them a gift or take them out to dine. Some people may have jobs where ethical rules prohibit them from accepting these gifts. Other people are happy and appreciative if you send a gift or take them out. Either way, you should be thanking them and offering to help them in the same or better manner. Now I will show you an example of my one-page reference sheet I use when interviewing with the CFPB, my second federal agency. The one page and its content is in addition to the references I inputted into the official USA Jobs application. Back then, I printed copies of this one-pager and brought it with me to share in the interviews. In today's paper-light world, you might just email as a PDF attachment or upload the PDF as an application attachment. So of course my name goes on the top, and I did it in 2 columns. It just happened that I had 6 strong people that I could rely upon to help me out as references. Sometimes it could be less for some people, 3 or 4, that's fine. It also just is a coincidence that the women's names were on the left column and the men's names were on the right column. That wasn't deliberate, it just sort of happened that way. At the top, I started with a woman who was at the time the FTC Deputy Executive Director. I wanted to be clear about their title so that the people checking my references knew the type of person by role that they would be calling. When I put the phone number, I did indicate what type of phone it was. Now, in a post-COVID era, someone may be very comfortable with you putting down their cell phone number, whether it's work cell or personal cell. I would indicate it in those ways, work or personal cell. If you put office, people will know that it's probably going to a landline. And then I did include the official work email address for these people. Sometimes if I want to put someone's personal email, because they can't use their current job as a way of indicating that they're a reference for me, it's fine to put the personal email and just indicate that it's okay to contact this person at their personal email. I included the tip about the phone numbers and the direct way to contact these people, especially before the email, because I had a previous boss who really liked having the phone number as well as the email for these people. If there's a situation where a reference only wants you to use the email, include that, but you might put a little note that says this reference prefers an email before a phone call. Then the next person was a gentleman who was a senior consumer protection attorney within the FTC, because there are multiple parts of the FTC. This person was sort of high up, many years there. And I knew that some people who would be interviewing me might recognize this person by name and recognize this person was an experienced person in the FTC. So that's why I put his information at the top. Then going down to the next level, I decided to show that I, as a paralegal, worked on multidisciplinary teams, and I didn't just work with attorneys. So as an antitrust paralegal at the FTC, I worked with investigators. I worked with people called litigation support analysts, who are also sometimes known as e-litigation support specialists. And these are people who help with incoming document productions as part of evidence review, and they assist with the document review platforms and softwares that the litigation teams use. And so it was important to me to have a person from each of these job groups on my reference sheet as a way to show that I work with people beyond just attorneys. And this woman over here, who was the senior antitrust investigator, I wanted my interviewers to know that she was very experienced within the agency and that I did work with someone who was very experienced. I also happened to mention that this person was the chief officer, which also means head, and this local means the union. I put this in because I did not believe that it would be used against me, and also because I did help this individual with some union work. So I was comfortable with putting union-related information on this reference sheet. I again wanted to sort of emphasize how senior and experienced this investigator was, and how experienced and the kind of prominent role that this person had within the agency's community. And then down here in my last row, I put 2 attorneys, because I work with them directly on the case. And I had the opportunity to work on a unique case at the FTC where people from the consumer protection side of it and the antitrust side of it worked together. So I wanted to show the people who are interviewing me that I worked on both issues, and I worked with people who had different methodologies of how to run a case. I work with them both, and I wanted to highlight that. The other thing, I also highlighted that this individual was also a senior antitrust attorney, because again, I want to show that I worked for experienced people, in addition to other types of team members. And again, I want the people who are interviewing me to know when they call or contact people what type of person they're reaching. I'll go back to this FTC Deputy Executive Director, and it may surprise people that a paralegal with only a couple years experience can put a person with such a high rank on their reference sheet. But I put her at the top exactly to sort of invoke that kind of question. And it turns out that I did work on a special project with this executive director, and it's another way to show that I do different types of work in the agencies. And then I had interactions with top-level people who could vouch for me. The FTC paralegal group had their own manager who assigned casework and did their performance reviews and organized their trainings. Noticeably, this person's name and job title is not on my reference sheet. I thought that it was ambitious but good to have 6 people, and I didn't want to add a 7th person. The paralegal coordinator, the paralegal boss, is a very legitimate person for a paralegal to put on their reference sheet. A reason I chose not to do so was that my boss did not see my work directly. This person was told about my work from all of these people that I worked with directly. So I made a choice not to put my boss, but instead put people that I work with directly, people who saw my work, people who directly dealt with my work. Because this was a government job, I had to, in a different section of the application, I obviously had to put my boss's name and contact information. So she was included in the whole application at some point, but not on this reference sheet. Another thing I did was I thought about language that helps the people who are checking my references as opposed to official titles. So the FTC has the Bureau of Consumer Protection, the Bureau of Economics, and the Bureau of Competition. The Bureau of Competition, if you work in the antitrust world, you know that that means antitrust. But sometimes some people may not know that Bureau of Competition automatically means antitrust. So instead of saying FTC, Bureau of Competition Attorney, Litigation Support Analyst, or Investigator, I just wrote antitrust. It also saves space. So even though using antitrust is not people's official job title, I was thinking about space, and I was thinking about the people who are checking my references and what's going to click very quickly for them. There's a lot of detail. There's a fair amount of detail in here, and I was comfortable already being a government employee putting this type of detail and description. You might meet someone in a different industry, different job field who says, don't put this much detail. So that's fine if you're considering working in a field that that person is experienced in and that person knows how to apply to jobs in those fields and do applications well in those fields. You have to get advice on things that are as specific as resumes and reference sheets and how many references and what type of reference people to use based on the industry, the sector, the organization, and the office type that you are interested in applying for. Finally, I'd like to thank every single person who has ever served as a professional reference for me for whatever job or academic program I've ever applied to. Thank you for watching my video. I'd love to hear from you on email at fmahmood@wellesley.edu. You can also find me on LinkedIn at that address. And if you do send me a connection request, please go ahead and send me a note. Before you go, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. And please go ahead and watch my next video. Thank you.